I want to give a brief commercial to my sponsor here, the OSU Extension Fire Program and the College of Forestry. It was just put together 2 weeks ago, and it's a new program funded by the legislature this year. And I just want to talk about this. We have a program manager, Carrie Berger, you probably know her. We have myself, a state fire specialist, and six full-time regional fire specialists placed out across the state of Oregon, strategically within the communities across the state. A wondrous thing. We've been hoping for this, and the potential to serve you folks within the extension infrastructure and the College of Forestry, sky's the limit. So I just wanted to let everyone know about that, because I'm pretty pleased and grateful for the funding. But what I want to do now, and I'll be referring to this program, and the link to this web page is in the chat box, and there's tons of resources. Our fire program is taking off, and it's taking off like wildfire. And there's a ton of resources in this page, in these web pages. So please peruse when you can. What I want to do though is emphasize something we did for the post-fire efforts on the 2020 fires. And we put together a story map to not only give you an overview of the 2020 wildfires, especially on the west side, but we built this as a tool along with our emergency response partners across the state. I'm trying to get out of it. And we built this as a depository for all resources to help those folks, landowners, property owners affected by the 2020 wildfires. And we have an overview, and in our overview, we talk about what John has shared.
If I could minimize.
We talk about the history, we talk about.
I could unmute, but I can't seem to minimize it.
I don't know what to do.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
we'll have to go out and come back in then. Here we go. This is what I'm trying to do.
Hey, Mike, can you mute some of the folks?
Yes, I'm trying to. You'll need to unmute yourself, Daniel. You have permission.
How's that?
Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, and we should only hear you.
Okay. Uh-oh, that may be bad. I'm not sure. But we have a lot of information regarding the 2020 wildfires, and a lot of what we have personal stories by people affected, which tug at your heartstrings. It's the real impact, the social impact of what happened during the fires, which we feel is very, very important. We have a background, a narrative of what happened. We have photos, graphics. We have a climate chart that puts that in perspective as well. You know how climate has increased over the years, average climate for the country. We talk about all of those pieces and parts that John addressed, and why 2020 happened the way it happened, when it happened, why it happened. And he is so correct. And we put that in a narrative format on this page that anyone can look at, can study. We put in a video. I don't know if you guys have seen this video. It's of a weather monitoring. You know, they used to have lookouts. Now they have weather monitoring on ridge tops. And this is what happened in real time as the fire blasted across from the upper crest of the Cascades across these mountaintops at 60 to 80 miles per hour in conditions of single-digit humidity that night, just booming like a hurricane into the Willamette Valley. It happened that fast. And this is recording in real time what happened. And you can see it. This is what went through 50,000 acres in I don't know how many hours. But it was fast, hot, and dry on the west side. The last time this happened in this area, like John said, 140 plus years ago, the Silverton fire that occurred in the 1880s that burned not quite 1 million acres, but close to it with this type of fire storm intensity. I mean, I don't think the west side is, you know, this is like 1910 fire. It burned hot and it burned fast. And you're going to have to see the video for yourselves to see the conclusion of that. And we put in maps, fire history maps. You can see what John was saying, that fire is a common occurrence, has been a common occurrence for as long as there have been a sun in the sky, atmosphere around the earth, and carbon-based life forms on the world. And then what we did was take a deep dive into the major fires. And we looked at, we did our calculating, we had all of the data, and we looked at vegetation mortality from common data sources for each fire, such as the Almeda fire, you know, was primarily moderate vegetation mortality, 15% high. And these proportions of intensity, severity, from fire intensity, severity, burn intensity, severity, vegetation mortality, they're really important to understand given this trend we're under. When I started wildfire fighting in the early 70s, things have changed. These proportions have changed on fire. John talked about fire season starting early, ending later. That's correct. It has. I can tell you from personal experience, it has. I can also tell you from personal experience in the 70s and 80s, the proportionate mix of intensity and severity was more towards the low and moderate and less towards the high. Well, guess what we found out? On these fires, you're finding this. Like this is the Bretagne fire on the east side, and preponderance of high vegetation mortality, high intensity than we have seen before. So that's important to understand. So we took a really deep dive in this for these major fires, looking at land ownership, and we characterized the fires, we did this in hopes for everyone to understand what happened, but also to learn from what happened. And then what we did, we provided a tool post-fire. We wanted this fire program to assist. In our extension infrastructure through the College of Forestry, we wanted to assist the communities in any way we could, as a fire program should. And we went into this and we created a map tool where anyone with a tax lot number, anyone, can enter their tax lot number, and they could zoom into their map, and easy to provide tools. So we structured this, and we worked with our partners, NRCS, ODF, Forest Service, and we could go in now and we could look at these fires, and we can go all the way into the tax lot. And now a property owner, no matter how many acres with a tax lot, could now pull up different base maps, different layers, data layers, and you could essentially fill out an assessment of individual property by burn severity, and you could fill out this checklist. You could fill out this checklist, which we put together with ODF and NRCS, and this gives all of the information for NRCS to prioritize and perhaps fund, and maybe other grantors to provide funding to come up with fixing what happened. And this is the summary, and we have an automated version of this. We have an automated version of this for iPads and iPhones, and you can fill out this checklist on your iPhone walking around your property. And we've given webinars, and we've given descriptions and instructions, and what is severity, what is intensity, how do you assess walking around your property, what to watch out for inside your home, around your property, everything needed for a private landowner to come up with a checklist of what happened, why it happened, what needs to be fixed, and what priority it needs to be fixed as for watersheds, soils, any aspect of the property. So this is a public tool for anyone to come in and use, and we've been supporting this. And Mike has OFRI, a valuable partner in this, and we also tried to provide resources to the private landowners with all of this. We tried to provide resources with federal and state contacts, community resource guides, farming and forestry, housing, pets, volunteers. The reason I really wanted to get into this, well, because I'm paid to do it, but the other reason is that since I can't serve on a fire line anymore, I'm too old and decrepit, this is a way to serve. This is a way to serve. Can't protect anymore, but we can certainly serve the communities. And this is a way to give back and to help out and assist. And that's what College of Forestry Extension does. That's what the College of Forestry does. And I'm really very pleased to be part of that. So that's our story map. And I wanted to, and what we plan to do, and I'm going to turn this back over to John pretty quick here, but what we want to do now is keep this platform for all of the fire seasons coming up. So we can do the same assistance and provide the same tools and partnership assistance and community assistance into the future for all the future fire seasons. Because my gut feeling is, after doing this business for almost 50 years, what we saw last year is not an exception. I knock on wood and I never wish for calamity, but I think we're going to see more. So we want to be there to assist. And what we're going to do now, we're gearing up to turn post-fire into pre-fire, into prevention, into proaction, into pre-hazard mitigation. And I'll talk a little bit about that after John covers a little bit more, but that's where we want to go with this program. We want to be a resource to communities, economies, ecosystems, everything else, pre-fire, during fire, and post-fire. So John, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
All right.
Does that work? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great.
Good. And yeah, thank you, Daniel. And this and Mike, thanks for posting in the chat for the folks that joined, after Daniel had posted these in the chat. And of course, you can always just reach out, Google out extension to get to this kind of address and look at this information that is available. There is a wealth of information here and links to other information and websites as well. Pretty heavy on the dark side of the message tonight. And so we've talked about how we've gotten there and what's happened. So here's the chance to look again and look at this issue of proactivity, of how we get out in front of this. And I love to do it because first and foremost, I'm a civil culturist, and really thinking about how to manipulate vegetation, forested vegetation, to meet the wide range of objectives that we have for our forest, well beyond the timber and monetary value and jobs and ability to pay the bill, but the clean water, the wildlife habitat, the recreation, the scenery, just the intrinsic value of owning and or being in or around or looking at forests. Our forests are those things. They're all those things at once. But they're also fuel that is growing and accumulating all the time. And that's what we have to remember. And that's why we have to proactively manage these going into the future. It's the only part of this. It's the only way out of this, actually. And actually, there's part of it that's good news, because unlike a hurricane, where the hazard is just based on where you are, the hazard part of risk, and all, here the hazard is something that we can proactively do something about it. And it's in our silvicultural toolbox. To a certain extent, we can even use chemicals to address some of these issues around fire behavior. But by and large, we're talking about mechanical treatments or prescribed burning treatments themselves. Proactive fuels management, anticipating this kind of fire behavior in advance, and putting the composition and structure and these disturbance processes, whether it's harvesting or burning, in the context of what is the wildfire risk that we have out there. And a big part of this, there's only so much work we can do mechanically. I'm going to show you here a figure in a second. But there's only so much work that can be done mechanically, even when we're pooling our resources together, because the markets aren't there for material. We don't always have the workers and all that kind of stuff. But every bit of mechanical work that we can do, and every bit of it that we can build around to have an economic value associated with it in terms of market developments and all that kind of stuff, every bit of that we can do will be helpful. But fire is going to be part of draining that reservoir. If you look at that fuel accumulation on our landscape, how it's all connected and that kind of thing, fire is going to be a major tool, the major tool in disrupting that amount of fuel on the landscape and draining this reservoir that's poised over top of us. And so that's going to be management, ignition, traditional prescribed fire, maybe before or after mechanical work of one type or another. And then there's going to be the wildfire events themselves. And I'm going to show you just a wonderful study in one of the more active groups over on the east side that's been part of the collaborative forest landscape management program with the Forest Service, a very active community collaborative, the Blue River Forest Partners. And they've been going, this is a 9-year figure that James put together, and James Johnston was active with this group. And you can see in the purple bars there that there's been a gradual increase in the number of acres that they've been able to treat with these restorative thinning kinds of approaches and prescribed burning. And they've been doing a lot, and they're recognized nationally as being a very productive forest and a very productive group for doing these kinds of fuels treatments. But right here in 2015, they had their Canyon Creek fire. Here's that lower percentage of high severity fire here, also a fire back in 2012, but Canyon Creek was a big one. There was a whole lot of acres of mixed and low severity fire, and spatially it's over here on the map, the high severity in red, the more golden color, and most of the perimeter was low to mixed severity fire, which in essence are a fuels treatment and a forest restoration treatment in and of itself. If you sum all this material together, there's only about 1.5% in this high severity. A certain amount of high severity is even okay and natural, even in a ponderosa pine dominated landscape, this dry mixed conifer kind of landscape. But this 6% in these other fire severities, less severe fire, pretty good 6.6%. And cumulatively, it took 9 years. The 6.6 was 1 year, 9 years, 15%. Also admirable, But cumulatively over a decade, 20% is not going to get us there. You know, a decade needs to, you know, if we think about the fire history, fire ecology, the fuel hazard, the overall wildfire risk, you know, every 10 years, every decade, we need to visit most of our ownership in order to offset that biomass accumulation out there. So we often talk about, even with these most productive groups, they're only treating, you know, a fourth to a tenth of the number of acres that need to be treated in order to manage this risk. So this is a major corner that we're going to have to turn with our mechanical treatments and markets, also with our management ignition prescribed burning programs, but also with our wildfire system, suppression system, and how we blend suppression when it is needed with managing fire use out there. Daniel's going to wrap it up now with an example from south of that area, south and west of the area that I just showed you.
Okay, thank you, John. Here, let me go. John, may you please pull that last slide up again?
Sure.
Before I share, I just wanted to. So what I'm going to be talking about, and again, the next web page is also linked in the chat. But this is an effort, like John said, very successful, nationally recognized, cross-boundary, public-private land effort down in Klamath and Lake County. And both of us have given you successful examples on the east side. What would really be neat is if we could start showing successful examples on the west side. that would be a neat thing to aim, but I'm going off target here. So, but what we did was follow this formula. Again, it's not a cookbook, it's not a direction, it's not a rule or regulation. It's just a guide that worked for the partnership I assisted. And we feel roughly with accommodation and specification, it could work elsewhere because it's pretty basic stuff, but it worked. And it starts with a partnership, it identifies the landscape, it goes through a risk assessment, then landowner outreach, public land mapping is the key, private land mapping is the key, assessments, wildfire response, pre-plans, support to private landowners, getting grants, and the efforts I want to talk about in Klamath and Lake County following this process. Okay, John, I'm gonna share, I'm gonna make the transition here. Oh, you have to stop sharing? Okay, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so what I want to share with you is, let's see, right here, and here, let me get it back again. So this web page is the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership webpage. And they are now in Klamath and Lake County, they have 1 million acres. Latest count since they started in 2016, and over from that period of time, they're on their third landscape effort covering, it's pushing 1 million acres. And that's public-private, that's Fremont, Wainema, and private land. Each of the 3 landscapes varies between 30,000 acres of private land to their third landscape. Thomas Creek has about 60,000 acres of private land. So these 1,000,000 acres are a combination of cross-boundary, true cohesive strategy efforts. And I wanted to show you this real quick. That's them at one point, and it's made up of federal, state, private, nonprofit, Nature Conservancy, Forest Service, ODF, NRCS, private land owners, managers, watershed councils. It's a great group of folks that put together. They now have a memorandum of understanding for shared stewardship. They're really doing this, succeeding. 20 to 30,000 acres of implementation every year, and they have this agreement in place. You know, OFRI has helped us out. OSWA is part of it. You can see where American Forest Foundation, Chiloquin, the local fire department, county fire department, very important. And what they did, they put together, using that process I showed you, put together a combination of assessing the hazard, the fire hazard, the drought hazard, with the values at risk. They put that together, and they put together a pre-hazard mitigation pre-plan integrated with a natural resource land management planning process for public and private land. I don't know if this has been done before, but we did it here and it worked. And we went down to the stand level. We went to the ingress, egress, evacuation routes, water sources. We set up for safe and effective firefighter response by assessing every single structure in a 30,000 acre landscape. And there were like 3,000 structures. And we entered it into a pre-hazard mitigation database. So when we prioritized according to not only forest health, wildlife health, watershed health, but also risk to structures, to communities, to subdivisions, and for safe and effective firefighter response, evacuation routes, ingress, egress. And we set it up with the fire management agencies to look at buffer areas, to look at and the proof of the pudding was a 242 fire burned in this corner. And if it wasn't for the treatments that were implemented in this landscape, we would have seen 242 take out a heck of a lot more because we still had some red in there. But they now have a plan. They have a plan now to decide where the priorities are on that landscape, public and private, and look at it from all aspects. And this is the latest landscape they have. So it's been very successful, but it started with that process I showed you with the publication we put out, you know, identifying the landscape, which we did, and landowner outreach and education. We put on workshops and classes, and we did private land mapping for the landowner, assessing and wildfire response plans. We tried to be as proactive because with my experience, I can tell you, I think I've been on, I don't know how many thousands of incidents over all of those years. But after every single incident, I always asked two questions. One was, why didn't I have $1 to put proactively in pre-hazard mitigation for every $1 million I spent during and after the incident? That was a common theme over 30 years. this is an answer to that question. The other question is, what could we have done that would have made a difference? Maybe nothing, I don't know. But 9 out of 10 times we could have done something. Like John says, we can do something at least about the fuel part of that equation. We can. But we need the planning. We need the partnership. We need a plan in place. We need goals and objectives. We need to approach pre-planning, prevention, pre-hazard mitigation in the same organized manner as we would approach dealing with an incident on the ground as it's occurring. It's the same bringing order out of chaos situation, and we can do that. We need to do it. So I wanted to show you that, and I wanna leave with a little video we put together. So we have the publication, we have the stories, we have the results, but we need to make it personal. And this video tries to do that, and I hope I can play this. I hope I can do this right. Let me see if I can.
This is our home. It's an 80-acre ranch. When we bought it 26 years ago, it had been abused a lot. It had been logged. Nobody had taken care of it.
We used to pull the brush by hand around the house. But you know, 80 acres, you can't do it all.
Our greatest fear was a crown fire. That ladder fuel go up and set that tree on fire, and then it hit the tops of the trees. You're done.
From a fire perspective, it's very important for these private landowners to feel secure.
The Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership is a collaborative group of private landowners, state and federal agencies, conservation organizations, and forestry consultants. So we bring all of the technical resources to a project, but also the financial resources to help get things accomplished on the ground. We're able to come in a non-regulatory role to work with them to make sure that not only are we meeting the landscape objectives for forest health, but also a landowner's goals for management of their property.
We didn't know how intrusive this might be for us.
When we found out somebody was going to be coming out here and working all over our land, there was a certain amount of, I don't know about that. We need to know a lot more. They just said, what do you want to know? And they answered our questions. If it wasn't what we wanted to hear, then we talked about it and figured out a possibility.
There was a real decision made, I think, at the turn of the century that fire suppression was the name of the game. They weren't putting up with this anymore. So normally if the fire would go through, everything would, I guess, you know, in tree world, they'd be all happy. But without the fire, we have to get some of the burnable matter out so that a fire that does come through is beneficial and not catastrophic.
After World War II, timber harvesting increased in the West. Large trees were removed, opening up the forest for even more small trees and shrubs to grow densely because of the lack of natural fire due to fire suppression. Because trees are growing so close together, and tree species, sizes, and ages are so similar across large areas, fires not only move easily from acre to acre, but so do disease and insect outbreaks, which are now killing trees or reducing the vitality of really large sections of forest. It's like getting in a room that has a limited air supply, and with 5 people in that room, you're okay. But if I were to put 1,000 people in that room, we'd all get stressed out, and some of us wouldn't make it. Well, the same thing with this forest. Fire is an important element in these ecosystems, but when you have that massive amount of biomass and dead fuel, it does more harm than good. Compounding the problem, more homes are being built more densely on private land in remote areas, which is often intermixed with federal land. Fire seasons start earlier and last longer, with temperatures that have steadily increased over the last 140 years. Today, when a fire starts by lightning or humans, they burn hotter, larger, and more severely. This is why we all need to be working together through partnerships to manage for healthier forests and watersheds through thinning and prescribed fire at a scale that can truly make a difference.
Prescribed fire is a thinning tool. It's no different than a chainsaw, except you're talking a landscape tool versus a 1 acre tool.
In this country, the juniper has encroached, and it comes in where it was traditionally pine forest.
Couldn't hardly find the cows in some of these fields because the trees were so thick. You remove the junipers, it also creates a lot more feed for the cattle and opens up the country. You can see where you're going.
One of the goals for the Lintons was to try to return or move towards the historic fire regime that was prevalent or present out here. They were on board and wanted to move forward with burning, but one of the concerns was the Forest Service piece that was directly adjacent to them. But if it went onto the Forest Service side, it would torch out a bunch of trees and cause a lot of issues. And so through this partnership, I was able to take that feedback. The Forest Service then went and identified and looked at their side of the fence and realized that they could do treatment. Now this whole area can be cross-boundary burned, which will benefit the Lintons and it will benefit the Forest Service. And without this project, I don't think that that would have come about at all.
Shared stewardship is really the recognition that wildfire does not know ownership boundaries. And so federal, state, universities, and then our local nonprofits and private landowners need to be working together to reduce the risk of wildfire. And the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership is really a leader in putting it into practice.
So we work with the landowners to map their forest and fire risk at pretty much no cost or obligation to them. And we can provide information about the condition of the forest, of their forest, and the recommendations on how to reduce their wildfire risk, and also discuss treatment options best suited for your property management, your goals, and the landscape that you live on.
These are ranchers that are managing their lands. We've got timber that's coming off these lands. These are, working landscapes that are important to the community and important to the economics of these rural small towns.
We were hesitant because we didn't want an intrusion and things to get out of our control. And I feel we've had control over this process from start to finish.
They had suggestions, they had knowledge, they had expertise. But if we didn't want that, it was whatever we wanted done with our property. Our goal was to get this fire safe and thinned, and they did that.
We haven't really gotten the public aware of how important this is.
We've been spending a lot of time and effort. We've been doing a lot of good work here, but we're not done, and we want to keep maintaining that investment.
Managing for a healthy forest is managing for the health of the economy and health of the culture, health of the community, health of the society. Everyone wins in this.
So I wanted to end, and John can close too if you want. I wanted to end with, I know these are East Side examples, but the concepts apply. East Side, West Side, Coast. There are variations on the same theme from my experience and my background. It's a fuel is a fuel. And whether it's your box of fuel you live in, or whether it's a woods of fuel, or whether it's shrublands of fuel, grassland, it doesn't matter. If it gets hot enough and dry enough, it will burn. And it may not burn beneficially. So it is really time that we started working together. That's why the fire program was funded. to provide that assistance where we can. And we need to work with partners. We need to work with all of you. So let's move forward together, please, and be proactive on this. Thank you very much.
Excellent. John, you have a closing statement you'd like to make?
Oh, no, let's go ahead and open it up for questions.
Go into questions. Okay, we've already got a few in the chat box and John is well ahead of us answering them, but I'd like to read them and then have him say his answers out loud and you can read along. So the first from John and Kathy Doomer, how would you know if we have too much fuel in our forest? And John had a very extensive answer, but just summarize it, John.
Will do. Yeah, we've got great science and great modeling tools for it, and we can get incredibly complex. Some of the models run on supercomputers and all that kind of stuff, but you're not going to want to go there. Most forestry professionals, consulting extension agents are going to have just a good sense of it or have a very simple PC-based kind of model they could run if you actually want to project flame lengths and rates of spread, given different weather conditions and fuel moistures and all those kinds of things. I mean, I train undergraduate students, underclassmen to be able to use these pretty simple tools. And it's actually publicly available software if you want to look it up. It's Behave +5 now for that. And it's available through the Forest Service, firemodels.org. And you can download them and play around with them.
Is that something while you're there that you'd ever want to teach a workshop on, or is that
Sure.
Maybe through the fire program? It seems to me that those tools, the professionals have them, but not always the landowners or even the regular foresters.
Yeah, and there may already be, I don't know, Daniel, does the Extension Service already have kind of some kind of short video on using Behave or
We do.
estimating fuel depth?
We do, and that's our job. Excuse me, that's our job.
Yeah.
Part of the fire program, part of extension, part of the fire program is to provide that assistance to landowners, because it always, after the partnership, remember it starts with a map and an assessment, a risk assessment or a resource assessment. That's how you determine where the priorities are, where the needs are. We need to map it out. We need to prioritize it. We need to assess it. And we have the tools to do that. And we do it through partnerships. And that's what we did in Klamath and Lake County. And that's what we're proposing we do around the state.
All right. And that will be led by the regional extension fire people. Is that what you guys are hoping to do?
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. Okay, John, the next one in the chat is, what if you're surrounded by neighboring unmitigated forest land? Mm-hmm. And your answer is?
You meet them out there with your pickup truck and you reach in the window and pull them out through the window and throw them down to the ground and try to teach them. No, you try to bring them into the discussion. This is Daniel's area and experience with Lakeview, my area and experience with not Lakeview, Klamath, mine with Lakeview and the Mount Hero and all. You have to form these groups that get together and agree to work on the issues together. And so if your neighbor just lacks the knowledge, or they want the visual screen between your property and their property and whatever's going on, there are proactive ways that we can address it and reduce the hazard, reduce the risk.
And really, the step of education and outreach is part of all of this. If you form a partnership that does the education and outreach properly, and a map becomes not only an assessment tool, but also a communication tool. It becomes an educational communication tool, in that's the common basis of understanding. That's your common basis of language that you can talk public, private. So for those landowners that are very reluctant, and there are, and you'll never convince everybody, but there are landowners that are so skeptical until you show them a map of their property in relation to 90% red on a 10,000 acres, and you teach them, well, these are the consequences. Do you really want that? I mean, they make the decision. It's their land. It's their private land. But as resource professionals, I feel we have an obligation to not make the decision for them, but to provide assistance and advice and recommendations. And if they decide not to, it's their prerogative, but we should at least tell them the consequences. And then 7 out of 10 times, we have convinced people who are reluctant to participate based on the education outreach and success of their neighbors. Proof is in the pudding.
Great answer. Next one, and I don't know who would be better at this one, so I'll let you guys fight over it. This is from Melissa Liston. We're going to have some thinning done this spring. Are there resources for us to address fire issues? So I'm thinking educational and financial resources.
Tons of information. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, financial, I don't know. Yeah, conceptual, let's look at this conceptually as well, because if it's a commercial harvest, you're primarily removing coarse fuels that are not particularly flammable, at least until they're dried and split and fed into your wood stove and those kinds of things. So it's going to be really important what you do with the fine fuels, the really flammable stuff. So if you do all the limbing and just leave it out there, you're going to make your fire hazard, fire risk even worse. So pay attention to what you're doing with that really flammable fine fuel in terms of piling it and burning it, chipping it, broadcast burn it, whatever you're going to do. But have your, make sure you pay attention to the fuel, the fine fuels.
Good. So this is from Mary Spearing. What is happening with fire prevention in Washington County? So Daniel, I know you guys have a Willamette Valley specialist, but she's not here today.
No, she's not, but we're putting that together. So Amanda Rao is the regional fire specialist for that area. We just put this program together a couple of weeks ago, finally. I mean, she's been here for a while, but we've put all the pieces together. We are forming like a hub for all the prevention efforts, for the resources. This will be a fire team that can not only work with our forest and natural resource agents that are already in the communities, but with the partners. So hopefully by the end of this year, everyone will be running and we'll have a plan in place to provide this assistance and the resources in place for them to use. I'm very hopeful for it, and we're working towards that end.
All right. I've one more question from me, but I just wanted, why Daniel was wrapping that up, I just want to compliment Daniel and Extension for going to the legislature and getting the funding for this new extension fire program. I mean, in today's state government and in today's university, new programs are really, really hard to find. And this was a program that is paying 6 salaries. So we've got eight salaries, right? 6 regional
salaries, Mike, 8 of them.
2 on-campus people. So it's just unheard of. And part of the reason that the legislature bought off on this was the success of Daniel's program and others like it, doing the regional multi-partner across the landscape. And that's what they're expecting. So it's just really exciting. And, I can't wait until we have some West Side examples. So yeah, that brings me to my question. And this one is for Dr. Bailey. See you there with your drip torch talking about prescribed burning. And I know Amanda Rao, prescribed burning is her life. How practical is it in Western Oregon to think about doing prescribed burning to reduce the amount of fuel we have?
Yeah, not an issue at all. We have a fire season, every year, and the vast majority of that fire season is good prescribed burning weather. Of course, we're not going to be out there on the crazy days burning. We're not going to be out on the rainy mornings burning because you can't. But the vast majority of the hours available we can project that fire behavior and get the intensity and severity exactly that we want. And so I've worked with Amanda for 10 years now with the Oregon Prescribed Fire Council, working to try to add steam and capability to a prescribed burn program for Oregon that could more mimic, other state, Northern California or down in the southeastern United States, where individuals are burning their property all the time, and they have the resources and support and training to be able to do that. Excellent. But not a problem for Washington County.
Not a problem.
And I wanted to throw in something, Mike, is that the other thing the fire program is doing with the partners is we're putting together ODF past prescribed burning rule in the 90s, but never funded it. We're working with partners now that we have the resources. By September, we will have an entire prescribed burn curriculum put together with ODF, Forest Service, NRCS, and we will be actively teaching, workshopping, bringing as many public, private individuals who want to learn the way to do prescribed burning within all of the rules and regs that the legislature has. Do it right, when to do it, how to do it, where to do it, why to do it. That's going to be finished. We're working on it as we speak, and it's going to be finished by September and published. And we're going to be doing beta tests across the state. And we're going to be really emphasizing, with support of the legislature, how to do this right and safely. And it's a pretty exciting thing.
It is. It's huge. It really is huge. Daniel, I noticed you posted something in the chat, a link to EM 916. Can you tell us what EM 916 is?
Sure. It's Fire Adapted Communities, the next step in wildfire preparedness. So there was a question that asked, well, are there guidelines on what to do for home defense or to prepare for wildfire? This was done in 2015. And it's just one tiny example. Please look through the catalog. If you go through the OSU extension catalog and just put fire in the search bar, you'll get dozens of publications that were made especially to educate, outreach, and guide and assist all of these efforts. And we want to put more in there as we go.
So, related question, putting fire in your Google. This is from Annabelle Morgan, wants to know, do we just go to OSU fire program website to see who's in charge in other counties? So talk about that. And then the next question, I don't know if I understand it. Do you ever need a place for undergrads looking for private landowner properties to use for this? So
the second one is yes. I mean, the possibility, and John is going to be part of this and has been part of this more than I have, but within the College of Forestry, the other exciting thing is with a new dean and a new department head, there's a lot of support to train faculty, students, partners, and to enter into a memorandum of understanding to actually be a training provider. So yes. I mean, again, the sky's the limit. Wouldn't it be neat to have students who have formed prescribed burn modules that can go out over the state in the summer and do some of this work? I think it's pretty exciting. And then with our curriculum, the pieces are coming together, supporting with ODF and Forest Service and BLM, it's all coming together.
Good.
Our students cannot go out and compete with consulting foresters and all that kind of thing. So it has to be educational.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll work with you.
Good. All right. Well, I don't see any more in the chat, so I have a real short wrap up, just an advertisement for next month, which is February 24th. Same bat time, same bat station. It's the exact link that you had to get here tonight. Same thing starting at, we'll open the thing at 6:30, 6:45. Show starts at 7. Tony Spearing is the chief next time. He's the bill from this week. And our 2 speakers, again, 2 topics, 2 speakers. The first is Michael R. and Laura Taylor. So really 3 speakers because they're a team. They're going to be talking on managing for beneficial understory vegetation. And Michael and Laura are with the West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. And if you go to the knowyourforest.org website, you can see a webinar that they did for Tree School Online on July 14th. So if you want a preview of a little longer program, so they're going to be half the program. Then the other half is going to be Jennifer Beath from Starker Forest, but Jennifer is going to talk about a program called the Oregon Natural Resource Education Fund, which is a fund that supports high school forestry programs. And as you know, OSWA has had a big, what do you call that? A match, a challenge grant going on to challenge chapters to raise money. And I think Washington County, you guys have supported it. So Jennifer is going to tell you how the money's being spent and what they are. It's a really cool program. So February 24th, 6:30 to 7, tune in. Follow it in your newsletter, which will be coming up from Bonnie and Tom. And anything to say to close us out, Mr. President?
Yes, I do have. Thank you. I have a parting gift from Washington County for our speakers, John and Daniel.
Great. Thank you.
These are
Thank you very much.
Douglas fir, beautifully done, made in Washington County. And these will be on their way to you
Perfect.
once I collect
Thank you.
your addresses. So I will, I'm sure I can find your emails, so I'll be reaching out to you guys. Thank you very much. Very good presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right. See you all next month. Thank you, John. Thank you, Daniel. Take care, everybody. Drive safely.
Thanks, Mike and everyone. Good night.
Yep. Thank you.
Good night.